Back, everybody, to HPG. And thank you very much for attending these talks. Now we are going to start with our first diversity and inclusion talk, invited talk. I'm very glad to invite Professor Cristina Nader Vasconcelos. She's now from Google Research Group. She's from the BRAIN team in Montreal, Canada. She obtained her PhD at Rio in Brazil, and she worked for a long time in computer graphics, computer vision, machine learning, parallel processing, and she's now going to join us with her wonderful talk, which is sharing experiences on being a woman in computer science. Thank you very much, Cristina, for being with us here and for accepting the talk.
Thank you, Esteban. I have to say that the opinions expressed here are my own and do not express the views of my employer. And to be very honest, it's the very first time that I'm public talking about this topic. I'm much more comfortable talking about graphics, GPU programming, vision, machine learning, or even nerve models, if you wish, but not about the circumstances that led me here. But things could have gone in a different direction if I had decided to quit my path in computer science to do something else. So I decided to accept the invitation, and I thank the organizers for having me. And I hope sharing my experience can help others in finding their passions and sharing. Are we good? Okay. So moving on. Last week, I was watching the news as everybody else, and I saw the British Prime Minister saying goodbye to his job. And he said he was giving up the best job in the world. In a fraction of a second, my mind just said, I cannot agree with that. Mine is the best. I love the fact that it constantly challenged me, and the fact that I'm always learning something new. It allows me to exercise my creativity. And as I work with open problems, one day is never equal to the other. Being the hands-on person that I am, I love the full exercise of building what is initially just an idea. But it's not every day that I feel that I'm welcome or that I identify myself in the portrait of a research science or a software engineer. There are days when you go to a conference to present your work, but you are asked if you are accompanying your husband or identified as a seller person. But those are supposed to be your peers. Or when you see female models being hired for such events, aiming to attract new clients, decision makers, and talent employees, and you realize that it was not even considered that you could also be in one of those groups. Those microaggressions are hard to call out without sounding like a spoiled child complaining about small things, or sound like you're reducing the importance of the individual efforts of your peers and their merit in reaching their amazing accomplishments. But the fact is that when microaggressions accumulate, it makes it
Tell me
really
when
hard.
you do that.
Can you hear me? It makes it really hard to someone from. Is
Cristina,
okay?
it seems that we cannot see your slides. Can you stop and share it
Of
again?
course. Of course.
How's that, Nick? Not yet?
The sharing button has just disappeared.
We can't see your slides, only the video. Let's see.
Yeah, the sharing button is not on my screen anymore.
The sharing button is not on the screen anymore. So
No,
just a second. There's a lot of people trying to fix this problem.
no problem.
Just a second, just a second.
Okay, it's back here. Now I see it.
It's back again. So try to share it again.
Can you see?
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, good.
There it goes. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting
No,
you.
no problem. Let's move on. So I was talking that where does this stereotype behind those microaggressions came from? I think that's the question that it's interesting that we focus on. So the modern stereotype for a software engineer or scientist is of a white boy that teaches himself how to program at very young age, and from that age builds his professional skills, leading to a brilliant career. In hit movies and series, this is the figure represented in the person of a good computer scientist. My childhood was nothing like that. My family didn't have a computer until I was a teenager, and I only had access to internet a few years later. By the way, my kids really love this his story. They look at me if I were an alien or maybe from some prehistoric age. No, this was the most common scene growing up in a middle class family in Brazil in 80s or 90s. And I have no doubt I can consider myself privileged among Brazilians and many other Latin Americans. As a young kid, I loved to build and observe things. And at school, I had a passion for math, geography, and arts. But my dream career was to become a 2D cartoon animation, as I was fascinated by the fact that animations are able to build not only new characters, but a complete new world, their own physics, their logic, rules, and an unlimited space for creativity. Later, I understood that the same thing is true for computer science, but that the impact of our creations can be extended to the real world. So I decided to apply to an undergrad course in this area without no much knowledge about it. But going back to the modern programming stereotype, I should say it was not always like that. I hope this audience already know this, but it's always good to remember that almost 200 years ago, the first programmer was, in fact, a woman, Lady Ada Lovelace. We also have to thank the development of the first compiler to a woman, Chris Hopper. When Hopper recommended the development of a new programming language that uses English words, she was told very quickly, don't do this because computers don't understand English. But she pursued it, and now we see computers that translate our programs into machine code. Up to this day, some people believe there is a social biology reason for the reduced number of women in computer science, as if women were less suited to coding than men, because of some biology better gifted men with qualities necessary to excel at programming. But if biology were the reason so few women are coding, it would be impossible to explain why women were so prominent in the early days, when the world could be far harder than today programming. Can you imagine yourself programming the devices that these two ladies used? It was a new field with a lot of math involved, and no helpful internet forums, no Google to query for assistance on your bug, or GitHub with nice instructive examples. Later, Ada Lovelace and Grace Hopper are not isolated cases, and women continue to contribute to the area up to this day. But data shows that before the 80s, the programmer workforce was much more balanced. During the 70s in the US, the number of men and women who expressed an interest in coding as a career were equal. In 1984, the percentage of bachelors in computer science graduates rose to 37%, but have declined since then to the current 18% only. Studies have shown that one of those reasons to this decline has to do with a change that happened around this date in how and when kids learned to program. Before then, pretty much every student who showed up at college had never touched a computer or even been in the room with one. Computers were rare and expensive, as we all know. Nearly all students were on equal footing and new to programming. The advance of personal computers in late 70s and 80s remade the pool of students who pursued computer science degrees. Once the first generation of personal computers found their way into homes, teenagers were able to play around with them, slowly learning the major concepts of programming in their spare time. By the mid-80s, some college freshmen were showing up in their very first class already proficient as programmers. They were remarkably well prepared for computer science 101, for instance. As it turned out, most of them were young white men. I read about this study in a New York Times article very recently, and it was revealing to understand how this resonates with my own experience as an undergraduate student during the turn of the century back home in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and later as a lecturer. During my very first week as student at the university, at the Computer Science 101 Introduction to Programming class. I remember as if it was yesterday. The professor asked the students to put their hands on if they had previous experience in programming. I asked yourselves, can you guess the gender of those hands? Can you guess their skin color? If you were able to build a class simulating the distribution of world population, would you be able to point to the nationality of those hands? Back to my experience, we were 7 women among 60 students, and none of us had such a previous experience. From that very first day, the professor decided it would be better to skip, just to skip, trivial introductory content. And from that day on, the minority was left by themselves. It was not a surprise to me when my closest friend decided to move to another career before the end of the semester, and so did many of the other people that were left behind. Somehow, I decided to stay, keep following my curiosity about graphics, computer vision works, and machine learning. Many years later, in my own lectures, I would introduce the school year doing the same question. Do you have a previous experience in programming? But I would share my own experience and welcome newbies to programming to make their natural questions and follow their own path to discovery without looking sideways. No matter their previous experience, I would tell them that I was committed to supporting them individual growth. I'm not alone in these efforts, and I am a huge admirer of initiatives out there helping young girls and women not to only build scientific skills, but most important, creating a space of belonging in these communities. They are not limited to these slides, but I encourage students to look for those initiatives. And to fathers, maybe thinking about their daughters or members of this audience that would like to contribute to a more diverse environment to also enroll in one of those. In the last 2 years, I had the opportunity to volunteer as a mentor in the Canadian initiative focused in artificial intelligence, the AI for Good Lab. And it has my great pleasure to meet smart young women that are out there thinking about the open challenges of our society and how can artificial intelligence be used as a tool for good in facing those challenges. Computers are really an amazing and empowering tool for helping humanity in our still open major challenges, human rights, climate change, and many others. And we need people dedicated to solve those challenges, involved in the process of building the systems that will help us face it. At the same time, the ubiquitous use of systems in our main social organization creates a set of new challenges in itself. And again, here we need people that are committed to question ethics, social responsibility, and overall implications and limitations of the systems we are producing. I strongly believe we need people with diverse backgrounds and interests to be able to get deeply involved in the design, understanding, building, and decision-making process involved in the creation of those systems. My message today is simple and it's a message of awareness. My goal today is very similar to the one I pursued while lecturing. By sharing non-stereotypical careers, I believe we can create a more welcome environment to people with different backgrounds. And the reason for doing so is not about making them a favor. No, it's because we need them. We need different voices at the decision table, and we need them to be highly skilled given the complexity of the open challenges out there. It's time for including them in the computer science picture. Thanks for listening. Sorry, Esteban, cannot hear you.
Thank you very much, Cristina. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very nice talk, very inspiring talk. Thank you very much for all your insights. Let's see if we have any questions here. But anyway, we are a little bit a rush of time, but I think we have time for one or two questions if someone wants to ask something. There are people saying, great talk, Cristina, very
Thank you.
good on the YouTube here. I will just make a very fast question and perhaps what would you say to a young Cristina that will be starting her career all after these years? I mean, what advice should we tell her? Uh,
Yes.
as
Thanks. It's a very good question. I would say just keep swimming. Just keep going and you'll find your path.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Cristina. Again, thank
Thank you.
everybody for
Thank you
attending
again
the
for the
talk,
invitation.
and we hope to see you. We have very nice talks in the other days, and we hope have your participation over here. Thank you very much, and we will be following up with the paper presentations now. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I see the slides are still on. Maybe we can switch.